Hey there, welcome to the Renew Church podcast, where we have honest and authentic conversations around Jesus and his mission. My name is Erik, and I am joined in studio today with our very, very special guest, my friend and colleague, Mr. Andrew Wood. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing really good. How you doing?
I'm doing okay. You know, it's been we've had a long day, and I.
Yeah, it's been a few long days recently.
It has. Oh. At the recording of this, we're in the midst of the Corona fun party times.
So. Yeah. The isolation, stay in your home.
Yeah.
Don't go see anybody but your family or the other pastor that you've spent time with already.
Right. And we're actually doing some cool stuff. It's pushed us into some new spheres, and this is one of them. So we are here, season 2 of our podcast, and for the first time ever coming to you via video for those who want to check it out on our YouTube channel. You guys can go ahead and digest the content that way. That's pretty awesome.
It's pretty fancy.
Super fancy.
Yeah, this is fancier than anything we've ever done before, for sure.
Well, today we have a couple of really interesting conversations that I hope you guys are excited about. I know I am. I know Andrew is. And one of the first things that we just kind of were thinking about, we were like, what are people thinking about? We just thought, like, let's talk about life in general, you know? And so we've titled our first segment Fat Pastors, because that is honestly the thing that I'm most worried about right now, is that I'm eating like a madman right now, like all kinds of junk food. I literally ate cake with my hands yesterday. I was just sitting in our kitchen eating my daughter's birthday cake just out of my hand like a Wolverine or something.
Yeah, so I've had more carbs in the last 2 days than I've had in the last 2 months.
Yeah, because you've kind of been on this like health kick thing. Tell me about that.
Yeah, I have. I basically, coming towards the end of December, I got a notification from my doctor. She said, you're in great health, but you need to lose some weight. And I was like, yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah, I've known that for a long time, but never heard it from somebody like you, who's been my family doctor since I was born. Yeah. And she's so sweet. So for her to say that, I was like, she means business. And so then I was like, what is she really talking about? And then I weighed myself. And for the first time in my life, I had been over 300 pounds. I know people are always like, no, you're not. You're like 220. I'm like, no, I've always been around 270, 280. And then I was over 300 for the first time in my life. And I'm like, that's like a marker. That's for me, at least. Yeah. That's like, okay, red flag. Stop joking about this. I'm 28 years old, and I actually need to do something different and not assume that I'll have many years in the future to change something.
Yeah.
And my health is more than just my weight. It's actually my physical, emotional, and spiritual well-being, and how I'm doing physically has a lot to do with all that. So, so I started to make some changes in January.
Yeah. So you went keto, right?
I did.
Is that still kind of your method of madness right now?
It's still the target I'm aiming at.
Okay.
Yeah. So I was looking for something that was accessible to me, was food that I still enjoy, that didn't change too much of how I already ate, that wasn't basically like cutting out everything I enjoy and doing something I hated and loathed. And so I discovered this keto thing. Everybody's discovered it. It's a trend. I had looked into it a couple years ago and tried it, and then didn't last with it. And then I thought, you know what, this seems to be kind of gaining some traction. So for me, I looked at it as a means to eat at a calorie deficit while still eating foods that were accessible to me and that I still enjoyed. So
yeah, I got to say, I was doing. I'll talk a little bit about the thing that I was doing for a while, but. You came into the office while I was like on a 900 calorie sort of thing, and you had like a chicken breast that was like filleted in half, smothered in like cream cheese and jalapenos
and bacon.
Yeah. And I was like, I don't think I've ever wanted to strangle a human being more than in that moment. And then steal your food. So I think there was something primal coming on in me. I just need to ask your forgiveness for that, because that was really hateful.
Well, granted. Granted.
I like that you mentioned like that's the target I'm aiming at.
Yeah.
I think so many times in our life we kind of place this ideal in front of us, especially with goal setting, you know, and we say, if I don't achieve this sort of ideal, this goal, then I've kind of failed. And so, you know, like your first slice of cake, then you feel like, oh man, well, who cares, you know? And then you're like me, just shoveling things into your face. So why was that sort of the language that you chose, like the concept? Has that helped you maintain a healthy habit, or has it kind of been a reason for you to give excuse? You know what I mean?
Well, everyone I've talked to says you got to give yourself grace. I've never actually spent time, like significant time, like months at a time, attempting to eat in a certain way or particular way.
Right.
I've always done 2 to 3 month or 2 to 3 week stints of things, and then it kind of wore off. I wasn't disciplined enough. Yeah. And so for me, the first thing is people said you gotta give yourself grace, and you gotta give yourself room to fail. Yeah. Which is why I started to use the language of the target I was aiming at. And then as well, what it allowed me to do was it allowed me to plan my grocery runs around it. So it was like, this is the target I'm aiming at. These are the foods I'm buying, and I'm not buying other foods.
Yeah, Cheetos.
Right.
Or maybe, can you have Cheetos?
I don't think so. No, probably not.
I want the diet where you can eat like just your body weight
bags
Cheetos.
Of cheese, yeah. So the idea of it being a target was, this is what I have around my home, but there's times where I'm eating out, and when I'm eating out, I can have a fat steak, and that's okay. But then there's times where that's not accessible, and so that's okay. The challenge with keto is that basically the whole concept is that you put your body into ketosis, which means it's burning fat reserves instead of burning carbohydrates for your daily energy. And so when you do break from it, you actually you throw your body out of what you were in. It's not a matter of just calorie deficit. But so for me, it's been a combination of, probably 5 days a week. My body's in pretty strict ketosis, and then sometimes I get thrown out of that because I have a drink here or there, or I eat a carb from something the other time, and I can just reset the next day and spend the next few days getting back into it, or still pay attention to calorie intake and stuff like that. So does that help?
Yeah, no, that's awesome. I think, so I did kind of a thing, one of those where you buy a whole bunch of like prepackaged meals, and they're all made out of like soy extract flavored with some chemical that you've never. Yeah, it was. I mean, like it worked okay. I lost like 20 pounds, but it was not the most fun way that I have ever found to kind of get healthy, or maybe even healthy. I don't really know. Like, I felt better, but anyway. But what I was going to ask you was like, how long did it take you to sort of push through the initial, like, this has become a habit and a new reality for me?
3 weeks.
3 weeks it took you.
3 weeks. And it still is. I mean, it still is. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
It's still becoming a habit. It's still becoming a thing. Like I said, the last 2 days have been just because of the nature of what we're having to adapt to. Right. I could have made the same choices the last couple days, and it's been more difficult to, and I've given myself, I guess, space to not. So it's still becoming a routine, but it became the norm for my at-home eating after about 3 weeks. I stopped craving the sugar that I was so used to having. Yeah. And I think that's just biologically, my body stopped craving it after. Physiologically, you just stop craving things after a certain amount of time and not having them. Right. And then things become routine after usually about 2 to 3 weeks, what everyone says. So that was the reality. And my mind started feeling clear and better after that time, which made it easier to make better choices. So
that's cool. So that's eating. Has there been other things that have you incorporated exercise or anything into your routine?
Yeah. I incorporated that in my weekly schedule. I actually started doing it during the day at work, outside of work at the gym right by our work, and that made it more accessible to me, and it meant I didn't have to take away from family time in order to do it or commute really to it. So that made that helped, and that was 3 days a week. I was doing that for an hour. Doing a mix of cardio and resistance training 3 days a week and spreading out what I was doing. Obviously that happened. That was going relatively smoothly until things changed for all of us. Yeah. But I haven't quite adapted to what to do at home now.
Yeah. Well, I always think that like anything that you do is that you would normally do is better. Like I went on a hike with my family the other day, and it's just like, well, I don't normally do that, right? So that's good. I think that's good, right?
I think it's good. Yeah. Something's always better than nothing,
right?
And then something more is always better than something, I guess.
Well, I am learning for sure, and you've definitely been an inspiration to me, our staff.
What about you? You've been doing better health-wise.
I try to. So I did this thing like that I mentioned before, and I lost a bunch of weight right away. But like I said, it was sort of miserable. So it didn't last super long. So I'm still like kind of maintaining that, like what I lost. which is good. But I just try to make a better choice every time I'm out, you know.
Yeah, you had a lettuce wrap today, and
you go with the lettuce wrap burger,
bun.
you know.
Yeah, no,
You
I
got to get
respect it.
that. So I would say one of the things that has really changed for me, and this is less health and more just like overall well-being, has been incorporating this idea of like rest into like what is part of. And I know actually you and I have talked about this a lot. We both read a book by John Mark Comer called The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry. I'm also reading his book Garden City, which is kind of particularly about Sabbath, the idea of Sabbath. I think that rest has been the thing that has really shaped my overall health and well-being most recently.
Yeah.
Because like you just don't like, I don't know. I used to eat ice cream, just for whatever reason, and now it's sort of like I feel better overall, so it's easier for me to make healthier choices.
What does that rest look like for you then, uniquely?
So the big change that we did was my family and I instituted Sabbath, like phone off. Monday is our family day. As a pastor, we work on Sunday, and so Monday's the day. So phones are off, and I don't take calls or anything like that. I'm home with my kids. If we do anything, it's as a family, you know. And that's been a huge. I had to be really militant about that, So I had to get really focused on it in order to make it a reality. So like I set alarms on my phone, just like practical things, like Sabbath day, and so to us that means like my phone is off and I don't touch my laptop, and we just stay in our pajamas usually and watch movies or go on hikes or whatever. So I think that's been the biggest move for us, in general. So and I think in a culture where we have this propensity to kind of do and do and do and do and do, Sabbath is pretty counterintuitive to us, and Jesus had a lot to say about Sabbath, right? He had some hot takes on it,
He did.
Like, it wasn't necessarily how everybody else approached it. Has Jesus like shaped his teaching or examples sort of shaped your ideas of what Sabbath or rest even looks like? Because I know like we've talked about some of this stuff.
Yeah, it is shaping it. It's currently shaping it, and it's still. I'm obviously playing catch up to Jesus's wisdom, right?
Aren't we all?
Yeah, so it's still shaping it.
All?
And I think the thing for me that I'm still wrestling through building into my life, but I am convinced is the right way to live, is to be working from a place of rest rather than be resting from a place of working or overworking. So the idea is that our culture kind of celebrates overworking, right? You ask any person who
I'm busy, bro.
is successful at anything, and everyone's busy. Everybody's
so
got
busy.
so many things going on, and we pride ourselves on being busy. And doing a lot of stuff and being successful at that. And then we kind of just crash and burn, right? We burn out, or we just need a day off, and we just binge something just to like turn everything off, or we're just exhausted, right? And we're anxious, and all of our habits kind of go out of whack, and our eating is not thoughtful and intentional, right? Because it's reactive. And so I used to think of rest as like, man, come in after a hard day of work or a hard week of work and just plump down and do nothing. And at least Jesus seemed to have modeled going into a place of rest, of Sabbath rest, of time with the Lord, of prayer, of fasting, of recharge in order to take on the week. And it's not because he was worn out from the week before necessarily. It was because in order to face all of the week's challenges, he needed to be full. So it wasn't just like empty your tank and then in a day hope enough refills to then empty it the next week. It was go into the week with a full tank. And so that's the Jesus model, and at least the rhythm, at least what I've seen, and I'm trying to live that, and I'm failing at it.
Yeah, I think I remember a conversation we had at Renew Cambridge. I was teaching on this several months ago, and one of the things I said was, God's Sabbath, like in the creation narrative, he creates stuff for 6 days, and then on the seventh day he rested, and I made the comment, God wasn't tired. That's not why he took a Sabbath. He wasn't tired, right? Because God doesn't get tired. No, God took a day to enjoy what he had created around the environment that he had created. And I think
that.
that's an important thing. That was the kind of the light switch that went off for me, was that rest is about enjoying what we have. It's not about prepping to do more necessarily. It's sort of like, enjoying the environment that's been brought up around us, our kids and our family and our home and our friends and all that sort of stuff. And it sort of refills us in a different way. It nourishes our soul. And I think that from there we have the strength to sort of continue on. And I think it also focuses our value too. Yeah. Like, what are we valuing? Are we valuing the work of work, or are we valuing the result of work? And I think that those are two very different things.
It also makes me feel a lot less important. Like I think, Jesus, obviously, most important guy, doing the most important stuff, at least from a Christian perspective. And he decided to take time away from that most important thing anyone has ever done in the universe, to actually rest and recharge and be still in the Lord and stuff like that. And so it's like, man, the work I'm doing is not more important than the rest I'm getting with God. Yeah. And that's a conviction I have. It's not I haven't built that healthy rhythm into my life yet perfectly. I'm still fighting with that all the time. But it's a conviction that I have that, I'm not more important than the rest that God created me to have and wants me to have with him and in him. So
I think that's awesome. Yeah. I think, one of at the time of this recording, obviously, like all the schools are canceled, right? Yeah. And so we're in this season of almost forced Sabbath for some of us, we're sort of stuck at home and that kind of thing. And actually we thought, what a better way to kind of learn this sort of new reality that many of our families are facing, of having their kids at home or maybe not having regular work or steady work to go to. Who could we go to get like the expert pro tips on how to be home with our kids all the time? And who better than a stay-at-home mom who homeschools? Like they're pretty much the champions of that. So we thought we would have Myriam Fugere, who is a beloved member of our Milton campus, to call in via the live stream, and so we're going to have her on right now. So and Andrew, why don't you go ahead and get her on the line, and we'll chat with her.
Yeah. While we're working to get Myriam on the line and connected, I just want to tell you Myriam's background. Myriam and her family have been living in Milton for 15 plus years. They have 6 kids. 2 of them are graduated out of high school. She's got a few in high school and some leading into high school. And
that's my boy Chad.
And so she's been homeschooling for 5+ years now. This is a decision that they made a few years ago, and she's going to tell you more about that. But she's got a lot of experience with life at home with her family, doing school with them, and how to engage your kids on a daily basis and keep them occupied, but in a way that's actually fruitful and beneficial, and that's actually getting them somewhere. So I believe we have Myriam on the line, and so welcome, Myriam.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's great to have you. Why don't you tell us a little bit more about your background, just life for you in Milton, and then also as a mom of 6, including a homeschooler.
Yeah, so we moved here 20 years ago, and I've been homeschooling for 5 years only. My oldest is 22, and I have a 20-year-old as well, who are out of school now. They're doing their own school. But then I have 4 girls one who's graduating this year, and 3 other ones, ages from 11 to 16.
Okay.
So, yeah.
And so you started homeschooling 5 years ago. What led to that decision to start homeschooling?
Basically, I kind of was pushed to it by God, I would say. This was not an ambition of mine. This is not something that I was really seeking to do. In fact, I thought it was pretty strange. All these memes that, perspective of how a homeschooler looks like, you know, Amish or whatever. And now, anyways, but yeah, I didn't really feel like doing that, but some circumstances with our children not adjusting very well in school really, and doors opening really pushed me to homeschooling.
Okay. And so, we're going into a season, at least right now, if you're listening to it, we're towards the end of March, and it's just the thick of the COVID crisis. And so a lot of families are finishing up March break, and they're going into week 2 with their families at home because schools are closed. And so what we're hoping to learn from you, Myriam, from your experience, is what to do with our kids now in our home at all times. And some of us are home with them full time now, and we're not used to that. And so why don't you give us some really helpful, practical wisdom and insight into what to do about this new circumstance a lot of us find ourselves in.
Yeah, well, as I was kind of establishing what my new life would be, even with my older kids who are in high school but now are at home, I really felt like we're all in this together, having to adjust and having to, and for some of us, going from no kids at home who were in school and now everyone's home, I really feel like we need to have a plan. And I was really feeling like with all of us, even just being affected emotionally a little bit, like my anxiousness has like rose a little bit, and just being emotionally aware that we are all in this together as a family. Kids are under a little bit of stress as well. Their schedule is going to change, and so we really need to first rely upon God that He would give us wisdom through this time. Like pray every day, morning, night, to make it today. That was my big thing that I would always remember when there was a crisis in the house or when I was not knowing what to do. I just call upon His name and then he's good. Really he really comes through. He whispers solution. And so why not talk about that? Why not talk about how good God is to us, and that we're all in this together, and that He's in control of the situation. He knows that we feel alone, and but we don't have to do this alone. That's what we have to remember. So that's an obvious.
Yeah, that's really helpful and practical and spiritual advice for us when it comes to our own well-being in this unique season. And obviously for caretakers in the home and those who are home with the kids, like our well-being, emotional, physical, spiritual well-being has the biggest and most direct impact on our kids' experiences being at home with us. So I think that's really helpful. Is there anything practical for parents that you would say, do this and this will help you kind of maintain a level of kind of peace and lower levels of anxiety, or just help with your new pace and some of the new rhythms?
Yeah, for sure. Just think through maybe a schedule. We all have schedules to go to work. We commute. We get up. We commute. You go to work. You drop the kids off this and there. Now it's a whole change. And maybe your March break was a glimpse into like, okay, can I do this for another 2 or 3 or 4 weeks without any plan, any schedule? And so that's so important. Just get together with your family, ask the kids, like, what do you guys want to do? Plan activities and then write them down in the calendar for them to be able to refer to, like on your schedule. Even you were talking about rest, like it's so important for parents to plan their rest and their kids to rest as well. Alone time for them is crucial. Plan for the non-negotiable too, because we are, like at school, principals are in control, the teachers are in control of the schedule, and kids got to follow, the flow. And so there are negotiables, and then there's not negotiables, such as in my family is like screen, and it's bedtimes and school time. So those things, you have to make them clear. And then for the activities or the other things, they can refer back to the schedule. And if they ask for screen time, then you can just say, well, when is screen time on the schedule? and then they can go see and say, see, is it that time now? No. So then refer to the schedule. So that eliminates so much conflicts, and it keeps the kids at peace with, and it keeps them, they just know what to expect.
Lies being pretty rigid in their schedule, especially in a school environment. And so maintaining that at home, even though it takes a little bit more prep time in advance, and sometimes you got to be a little bit of a drill sergeant about it, you're saying that's actually best for your whole family if you maintain rigidity to the schedule rather than just kind of let things go and let things fly and let things just happen spontaneously. That's really helpful.
Yeah, and it's really important to, like, back to that alone time. You were saying how, like, just resting. If we don't step away from our kids a little bit, just sometimes I just go in my room and just lock myself in and say, I'm not I'm not coming out for another hour. So just, this is your reading time, or this is your quiet time. Just play in your room. And it's hard, and it's something to get used to, but we really need it. Like at school, teachers take their quiet time. They have breaks.
Right.
And so at home, it's important to do that as well, and for the kids to respect it. There's a really good book by, if anybody is taking notes, by Sarah Mackenzie, and it's called Teaching from Rest.
Okay.
And it's a very good, encouraging, light, easy to read book that you can maybe get encouragement from and get tips from.
That's really helpful. We'll make sure we put a link to that book in the show notes. And just lastly, for parents who are concerned about kind of their kids' academic or educational just steps forward in this season, can you give us some advice, academic advice, if we're not trying to like full on homeschool our kids, but we still want to make sure our kids are taking the right steps forward, or they're still being challenged in their academics? What are, as a quick practical step or a couple ideas for us?
What I would say is really stick to the basics. Stick in the sand. Jesus taught that way. He wrote in the sand with his finger. So it is possible to keep it super simple. There's so much downloadable material that you can download, but then you can get lost in that. So if you stick to 2 subjects, which the most important ones I would suggest would be literature and math. So by literature, what I'm talking about is just reading with your children. So learning how to read for kids, it's either they forget it, or you can like just nourish that love of learning, of reading. Sorry. So to encourage that, what I've found is that reading aloud to them and with them and being excited about a book really is half the battle. If you don't impose the reading, especially for young readers, if you don't impose the reading on the kids and say, oh my word, like, and then and test their level and all that, just forget about that. Just go with reading good content, good books. Pick books of virtue. Pick the Bible. When was the last time we read to our children the illustrated Bible? So choose that. Choose good context, like maybe science books you have at home lying around. If you don't have many books, and there are some ebooks that you can have and download on an iPad. There's so much resources, but make sure it's a really good content. This is a good chance for you guys to take that time to nourish your child's soul. When they're at school, they spend a lot of time away from you, and so right now you have an opportunity to really dedicate some time to nourish their heart and make this a happy time with you, a time where you are in control and they are safe within your wings. So first is that, yeah, read aloud with them, to them, have them follow along with their fingers if they're um, just starting. Um, if there's a conflict, even, like, I've found that that's actually a really good distraction. Is there's conflict, there's tension in the house. Sometimes for tension in the house, I'll just put music on, but sometimes I'll just pick a book and just start reading it. I'll just say, "Oh, wow, what a great story." And I'll just start reading it, and then you just all cuddle, or they don't. Sometimes they don't. They just like keep going like this. But it's a really good way to just let the tension down, because a story can just distract our minds. Another thing is that Jesus told parables. He told stories, and he was such a great teacher and model for us. So why not take from that and tell stories to our children? I love stories. So the next thing is math. Math is such a hard thing. I'm not a math brain, but stick to what level your child is at. Try to find that out. You can go on the Ontario pages. I'm speaking more for elementary children here. For high school students, I'm sure that they're going to have online classes, and that teachers are going to provide work for them. But for elementary teachers, they're not going to send us work. But because kids catch up too. Like, if we're worried about academics, we honestly, kids are resilient and they're just going to catch up. So I wouldn't worry about that, but I would try to make it fun. But for maths, see what they're learning this year. Were they learning subtractions? Were they learning additions, multiplications, just writing their numbers, or knowing their numbers? If Find out what their level is at, and then choose that as a jumping start. And online, there's tons of, just even if you go on Google Images, you can download sheets. You could play dice with them. Legos have, like, you know, counting things. You can pile up Legos. Anyways, there's so many things. There's money. There's so many ways that you can do math around the house, that it's not a super heavy burden, but it's still kind of scheduled in your school time. So if you've made your school time on your schedule, back to the schedule, from 9 to 11, at 9 we read and we do a game, and then at 10 we do math and do a game about math. Then it's math time and it's on the schedule. So I would suggest to just find out their level, and then find some free online links, which I will provide for you. I have a few links that I can just post.
This is really, really great stuff. I really, really appreciate you giving us your time, Myriam, and sharing all this wisdom and insight with us. I thought the thing that you said there was really powerful to me, was to think about using this time to actually nurture your children's soul while you're helping them academically. I imagine the school environment, especially the public school environment, teachers are all doing their best, but there's 30 kids in the school, and they don't belong to any of the teachers, right? And this is a circumstance and a chance where your child's soul can be nurtured while they're educated. I think that's a really beautiful way to see this season, and how it can actually be a blessing. Thank you so much for joining us on the podcast. I want to let everybody know that Myriam actually wrote a blog that can be found at renewchurch.ca, and there's more details there, and there's more information there, and we'll also post some links on the podcast show notes to anything that Myriam was referring to. Thank you again, Myriam, for your time.
My pleasure.
Yeah, we'll see you.
What a champ she is, huh? I mean, this is the time of the homeschool mom. Let me tell you, like, the world has been waiting for homeschool moms to be the coolest people in our world. Yeah. And I think we're here.
Yeah.
They're getting the credit that they deserve.
I guess the thing I didn't think about, we were just talking about rest.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting there talking to Myriam thinking what I think of Sabbath rest, right, from someone who works outside the home, isn't the same for someone who's homeschooling working inside the home, right? And so maybe I don't know about you. You've been your wife started homeschooling this year, and you work outside of the home. And so what does it mean maybe to help your wife get Sabbath rest in this unique season with not just doing homeschool like she was doing,
right,
but also with you being around more often and being kind of stuck in isolation and not being able to go out other places? Like, what does that look like for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're still figuring those pieces out a bit. You know, like there's for sure times when, I'm just, Austin, you go to the coffee shop and you take a book and we'll see you in 4 hours or whatever. You know, there's definitely times where that's true. But I think we do really enjoy our time as a family and stuff. And I think that, as a husband of my wife, who kind of has positioned herself to be the main school teacher and all that, those kind of things, caretaker of our kids, I find a lot of joy in letting her have kind of her alone time and stuff like that. So but we're still learning those, to be honest with you, and I think those rhythms take time to sort of develop. So
that's good.
Yeah, it's good though. It's been fun. Yeah, one of the things that I even was thinking of is, as a dad, my whole family were public educators. Okay, it's like my grandfather, my aunts and uncles, and everybody were all teachers of some nature or other, and so I was a bit of a skeptic coming into the homeschooling thing. Like, don't homeschoolers just like not know anything about current events and they watch Christian cartoons from the 80s and that's it? And I have been amazed at not only the academic progress of my kids, but their engagement with content academically. Like my kids are studying Rembrandt paintings, and like they're memorizing poems, like famous poems, and learning to read. And
how old are your kids? I don't know. Not everybody knows.
My oldest is 7, and he can quote for you like Robert Frost poems and stuff like that. Yeah, amazing. I don't know exactly what the authors are, but there's various things, and they're studying Da Vinci. They studied paintings. I don't even know who that Da Vinci, and you don't know who Leonardo da Vinci. Maybe you need to be.
I was public school. Yeah,
but as a skeptic, I have been just amazed at what some really focused, intentional academic time can actually do for your kids. Like my son went through public school for a while, and it just seems like he's learned, soaked up a lot more, especially in math. Like he knows a lot more math.
So have you become a homeschool apologist?
All right. I'm pretty sold, actually. Yeah,
I'm
amazing. I'm amazed by it. I would say that my wife is an all-star. So I don't know. I think it has to work for your family. Our decision was based on the idea that my work schedule is primarily in the evenings and the weekend, and so there were whole days that I wouldn't see my children, and we just didn't think that was a good idea. So that's kind of the reason that we decided to do it, was because of my work schedule. So, everybody has their own thing, but yeah, I think it's awesome. Yeah. So highly recommend.
Yeah. Well, we are a few years out from even thinking about it. Yeah. But it's going to come quick.
For sure.
Yeah. That's really helpful insight.
That is awesome.
Yeah. Anything else you wanted to talk about this week?
This week? Yeah, no, I was just thinking about the implications of all these things, even from a spiritual standpoint. Like we are primarily disciple makers. That's who we are as the church. If you follow Jesus, that's what we are here to do. And in this season where we have a lot more time to be intentional and relational with people that we love, that we know, especially people who are part of our own family, I think we have a unique opportunity as the church to just really press into the things that matter the most.
Yeah.
And I think that if you look at even raising your children as disciple making, I think it really it reframes these current realities.
Yeah.
And I think it helps us to kind of focus on what matters the most.
Well, hopefully we'll get a chance to explore more of that in future weeks' podcasts.
Yeah.
We're going to continue doing this podcast over the next quite a few months, presumably.
Yeah.
and cover a whole series of topics and stuff like that.
Yeah, so stick around. Make sure you subscribe to our content. Make sure you check out renewchurch.ca for upcoming things, events, live streams, that sort of thing. And keep sending in your feedback. If you want to see something in the podcast or hear content talked about, you can go ahead and email me. My email is Erik, E-R-I-K, @renewchurch.ca. And I'll filter through some of those suggestions, and hopefully your idea will be on one of our upcoming podcasts.
That'd be awesome.
Well, thanks for joining us. We love you guys, and we're hopeful that you'll download our podcast next week, month, year, whatever it is.
Thanks for listening.
All right.